thank you to all the participants for being here, all the fellow panelists. Thanks for CESA again for the opportunity, for taking the lead for us to have these conversations. This topic is obviously very important for us as South Africa, given our history, and an equally important topic as well for the world, as you can imagine if you think about recent events like your Black Lives Matter, etc. I think we are at the right time, and I have to give kudos to you to be leading us in these discussions. Very relevant for the month as well, given that October is Global Diversity Month. So I thought, spot on for that to have us have these conversations. I'm also aware that, I didn't attend the first seminar, but at the first seminar, you would have had the chairperson of our board, Dr. Sioka, speaking on this very topic, speaking about influencing diversity in the workplace. She would have mentioned one of my favorite quotes there, which is, diversity is being invited to a party and inclusion is being asked to dance. I think that really sums it up in terms of what diversity is. Again, you've already spoken about diversity and a little bit about what diversity is and what inclusion is, and we'll go a little bit into that. Our definition of diversity is that the workplace is about understanding, accepting, and valuing differences between people. We know that there is a lot of research that tells us that more diverse organizations actually lead to better results. It also takes on many forms. You've already mentioned that. What is important, and as you said, we kind of use the terms diversity and inclusion interchangeably, but what is important is that it's not a standalone concept. In order for an organization to be diverse, it needs to be inclusive as well, and we'll get into that. Are you able to see the slides from your end?
Yes, we are.
Okay. We can see it now.
Mariam, on slide. So in terms of what we'll cover today, we'll go a little bit into the concepts of inclusion and talk about this concept that's growing in popularity now called unconscious bias. And we'll spend some time into some strategies about diversity and inclusion in the workplace, and just a little bit to end off with our experience as PPS. What is inclusion? Inclusion is about recognizing, respecting, valuing, and leveraging diversity in a way that enhances our points of view. An inclusive culture in an organization is where we all feel we can bring our whole selves to work and where we can express our ideas openly. More importantly, diversity is a noun, inclusion is a verb. Many benefits of inclusion in the workplace. Inclusivity rather attracts people into an organization. This results in different talents, ideas, thoughts that can take the business to the next level. It also, and as we've seen, promotes innovation, and it leads to better business results. It drives organizations, if people feel included, and as a result if people do not feel included and do not feel free to speak up and share their thoughts and ideas, they won't be heard. And this can result in an organization missing out on those crucial insights that live within an organization. So it's very important that an organization creates that culture of where people really feel included, no matter their background or no matter where they're coming from. If I move to, how do we begin this journey of transformation into a diverse and inclusive working environment? Reminded of a powerful quote from Martin Luther King, where he says, "There is nothing more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." So for us, it's really about understanding what diversity is and what diversity and inclusion is, and it's not. The efforts of organizations may be well-meaning and mostly prove ineffective. We may ask, why is that the case? Mostly the answer can be found in ignorance. And we'll talk about that as well when we go into the unconscious bias. Diversity and inclusion initiatives should not be developed to comply only with legislative environments. Obviously, we know that in South Africa, we've got the EE Act, But if you're an organization that's only going to be doing these kinds of initiatives only to meet the letter of the law, then you're missing out on an even bigger opportunity. It's not just a tick box exercise. I think there is much more value in ensuring that our organizations are diverse. And once this is visible, the next step would be to start having open dialogues within organizations. Open dialogues is about having tough conversations that foster equality and fairness in the workplace. And as Chris said earlier, we often talk about diversity, looking at the two constructs of gender and race, but there are many others. There are, people's backgrounds, there are where they studied, there are, the ethnic groups, sexual orientation. There's so many others that we don't often talk about. And I think we should make a conscious effort to openly give those people space. Disabled people, do they have a space? Do they feel welcome in the organization? It's about creating opportunities to engage and obtaining a fresh perspective. Because if you're all alike in one organization, then your view of the world is likely to be similar. Open dialogues is also about being appreciative of diverse thinking, different ideas, generations, backgrounds, etc. It's also about introspection and considering our own unexamined behavior, also known as unconscious bias, which is what we'll get into now. So unconscious bias, you may have heard of it, is the term refers to when our brain automatically tells us that we are safe with people who look, think, and act similar to us. It's kind of a blindness and inability to see factual information right before us because our brain expects to see something else. If left unchecked, it can lead to very negative consequences for a business because of the poor decisions we can make as a result. We can all recall just in the last few weeks, or I think it's a month now, the Clicks debacle. That was, I think, a clear example of unconscious bias. I think that example is going to be used, I imagine, in many business schools as what happens when you have unconscious biases and you don't have diversity potentially within your team. So, people are not allowed to speak up even when they see that something is potentially explosive. I'm going to ask, so in the next slide, I'm going to ask that we spend just a few seconds looking at this. Maybe you can put it for me in the chat box to tell me what it is you see. So I'll give a couple of seconds for people to for the participants, if you don't mind, just go through into the chat box and tell me what it is that you see there. If you can't see anything, that's also fine. Okay, I see a map. Jessica. Middle East map, okay, interesting. Aerial photograph of something. Okay, so people are seeing a map. Can I have a few more? Cat shadow, okay, that's a new one, a face. Interesting. A cow, a turtle. Okay, so Elaine is our winner. I'm quite sure that we've seen different things, but the idea here, so if you go to the next slide, Maria, is a cow. So if you look at what's circled in there, you'll see that you'll see an image of a cow. And I think what this tells us is that all of us view things differently. Yet once an idea is thought or planted, it's very difficult to unsee it. So if, for the next time that somebody shows you this, you will immediately see the picture of the cow, even though you had not necessarily seen it in the first picture. Next slide, please. So what are the consequences or the negative consequences of unconscious bias? We've already spoken. I mean, I don't think I need to delve more into the Clicks example, but from an organization point of view as well, besides losing, I mean, consequences are big, including losing your customers, but you can also lose out on great talent opportunities in the recruitment process, which is why, best practice recruitment process is to steer clear from asking those questions that may or may not prejudice people positively or negatively. So, in South Africa, you do not ask questions like your background, what do your parents do, or what do they do, etc. Because we know that there is some kind of privilege that comes with people who say, my father is a CEO of this company. This is my father is a gardener, or my mother is a domestic. So we don't go into those for a very specific reason too, because we know all of us have our own unconscious biases. And I think that's another important point as well to say, it's no use for us to go around and say, I don't have any unconscious bias. All of us, and I think that's a first step in admitting it, even as a senior leader, to say, all of us have our unconscious bias, all of us. The trick here is to know what those unconscious bias that you personally hold are, so that you can call yourself to order as you see them rearing, their head, whether you're interviewing, etc. Some of the other negative consequences, employee development could be slowed down because based on your worldview of them. It can obviously impair diversity. It can drive up staff turnover, attrition, and it can lead to low staff morale, as employees may feel alienated and therefore may withhold ideas and solutions, which actually holds you back as an organization. It can lead to lower customer satisfaction, and all of these things, as we know, all influence the bottom line of the business. And what can we do differently to change the unconscious bias? Again, have the courage as organizations to, firstly, as individuals, to examine our own behavior, own up to the various biases that you have. I mean, there's biases that we don't talk about often. There's something called a beauty premium, where people are known to say, if somebody pitches up at an interview and you're interviewing 3 or 4 people, the beautiful people generally tend to have better, they already, it's called beauty privilege, where they come in and they already scored a point. We don't see those points, but they've already scored those points even before they sit down. And that's a bias that interviewers have, us as senior managers have. But it's also about recognizing those things. People have rural versus urban bias. Well, good English versus not so good English. I mean, there's many, many biases, over and above the kind of diversity factors that we've spoken about. But again, it's about ensuring that as managers individually, you are aware of what those are and that we talk about them within organizations. And also being mindful of triggers. For example, when we're tired, hungry, we're frustrated, our brains rely generally on unconscious processing, and studies have shown that then when we are feeling like that, we are more prone to those biases. So I think, again, when you're feeling like that, take a break rather than making any decisions. And I think always, as I say, pull yourself towards yourself to say, am I making the right decision? Are my own personal biases coming to play here? Do I have certain views about, I don't know, gay people or whoever else might be sitting next to you? What else we can do? Obviously through ongoing training. It's ongoing. It's never a matter of, we do it once and for all and we're done with it. It's literally it's a conversation that organizations continuously have to keep doing, and so that we show each other. And I think more importantly, we also want to start in organizations a culture which allows people to say, to call each other out, to say what I'm seeing, with colleagues, to say what I'm seeing is happening here, or what you're doing is a classic case of unconscious bias. You are clearly biased against A, B, C, D, E, and we should talk about it. Not in a bad way, obviously, always in a respectful manner, but we should talk about it to say, this is what we're seeing. And then some of the strategies, and some of these we're also using within PBS, but some of the strategies in terms of diversity and inclusion, first one is the power of storytelling. Storytelling can be used to differentiate, to connect, to influence. It allows for employees to share their experiences and how it impacted on them, thereby allowing the listeners an opportunity to reflect inwardly about their own behavior. And I think we need to just create spaces in organizations for staff, because everybody has a story. The fact that, that's what makes us individuals, the fact that nobody else is like us. And just, create those spaces for people to be able to share their stories. One of the things is, as well as creating more inclusive workplace policies. So, have a look at your parental leave policy. The maternity benefits, are they similar or the same for males? For females, we know some companies now in South Africa have, for example, started internationally saying, even for males, they're starting to give the 4 months parental leave for males, because, I think again, the growing view now in terms of that is that, why is it just the 4 months, for example, only for females who are obviously the primary caregivers? But we're starting to see companies go that way as well. Do you have allowance for people who are adopting, for, again, gay couples, etc., in your parental leave policies? The third one, in terms of the strategy that you could adopt, is just using inclusive language. The use of language that is, firstly, all-inclusive, that everybody understands, that is non-discriminatory, that's free of biases, will ensure an inclusive and a collaborative culture. For example, steering clear of non-sexist, non-racial terms. And even on the non-sexist stuff, steering clear of even making jokes about things like that, because, it may have been an old company culture to make a joke about women doing this or that, but as you continue moving in and bringing new people, somebody's going to come in and think, oh, I didn't take kindly to that kind of joke. It might have been acceptable, I don't know, in the 80s or many years ago, but just be very mindful of those things, but also mindful as well in terms of when it comes to gender, gender roles that we give. If you're sitting in a meeting and you want somebody, we suddenly need somebody to take minutes, for example, do you automatically look to the females in the room, or does that role go to anybody else? If somebody's going to be serving tea, for example, in the meeting, again, is that person usually a female or not? So I think all of us, it's a constant thing that we must all continuously be asking ourselves to say, why did I choose Maria to do the coffee versus John, who's sitting right next to me and may even be closer to the coffee machine? So, we must be thinking about those things. Educating company leadership, we've already spoken about that as well, about creating those platforms. And again, here, we should not assume that managers understand the importance of workplace diversity, or that they know how to hire and manage a diverse group of employees. In fact, we've seen that that's not always the case. We need to empower ourselves, and we need to empower managers with the skills necessary to grow and nurture a diverse team. Again, you can do this by scheduling cultural and other sensitivity training. That can be a great first start. The fifth one there is about building a strong mentoring and coaching community. Mentoring and coaching programs are a key component of workplace diversity programs, and they ensure that everyone has the opportunity to be developed. Employees with high potential should be offered mentors and coaches. And again, many of us from becoming a mentor or coach in our personal capacities as well, as this will also enrich and add value. I think more importantly, this also becomes important in organizations where people want to see representativity. I'm still on the previous slide, Maria. People want to see representativity. So it's also very important that you start being representative even at senior levels, because people want to see people who look like them, because then they also think, oh, I have a chance in this organization. I could also end up becoming so-and-so, because, and that's the power of representativity and how important that is. And last but not least on the strategies is leading by example, obviously. Everything about organizations, the culture, they say a culture of an organization is based on the leader, and that is good news or bad news. It's obviously good news if the leader is leading by example and doing all the things that you say in the papers on the walls that you say you're going to do. It's bad news though if the leader is not doing those things. And it obviously that's bad for the culture of the organization. If I come to, I'm just going to share a video here. I think it's a 1-minute video of what do we do at PPS. We're missing the music. I can't hear the music, Maria.
Molefe, can we try it later on?
Okay, we can do that, yeah. I think I know exactly what happened. I think this setting is done before you actually start the presentation. But we'll do it later. Now it's almost ending, so I think let her run it to the end now. But yeah, obviously we're missing the full effect now because it just sounds and looks better with the music that comes with it. When you say later, when are we going to run it?
Perhaps we could run it at the end of the Q&A. So if we could just send that on to Godfrey, and then he can play it.
Perfect, perfect. Now, Maria, then we can move on to the next slide. So, I'm closing now that, the ball really is in your court as to whether you want to be an average, good, or great organization. The choice is really yours. Taking the first step starts with each of us. We collectively make up the organizations that we sit in. We need to be reflecting day to day on our actions, our thoughts, and how we show up within the workplace. And last but not least, diversity and inclusion can only be achieved if we all work together. And thank you.